Hello and welcome to the Top Story, a podcast with the headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I'm Shane Bigham. Coming up in this edition, reports say rescue crews have recovered 18 bodies after two aircraft crashed into a river near Ronald Reagan Airport in Washington, D.C. Over 30 died in a stampede at a religious gathering in India. More foreign tourists experience Spring Festival in China. We begin in North America. Reports say rescue crews have recovered 18 bodies after a mid-air collision near Ronald Reagan Airport in Washington, D.C. The incident involved a regional jet from Kansas and a military helicopter. The jet had 60 passengers and 4 crew members on board. 3 soldiers were on board the helicopter. A large-scale search and recovery operations underway in the Potomac River. The airports halted all takeoffs and landings as helicopters from law enforcement agencies across the region fly over the scene. The collision occurred in some of the most tightly controlled and monitored airspace in the world, just over 3 miles south of the White House in the Capitol. U.S. President Donald Trump says he's monitoring the situation and calls it a terrible accident. Nick Harper has more from Washington, D.C.
Well, there was a press conference recently, but none of the officials who spoke wanted to confirm any casualties or fatalities. But one official did say, "We don't know if there are any survivors." 60 passengers, 4 crew members and 3 Army personnel. Potentially, none of them may have survived this collision. So those reports of bodies being pulled from the water still unconfirmed, although it did seem to come from a police official speaking to US media. Some of the 300 search and rescue teams who are down on the ground, the personnel, those teams have now been working for hours since that mid-air collision, working in very difficult circumstances there in the cold, dark water. We know that the National Transportation Safety Board investigation, a preliminary investigation, is underway, and we have already heard from the military, whose Black Hawk helicopter was involved in this collision. They say that it was a training flight, and the 3 personnel involved in this were taking part in a training flight during the course of this evening. In terms of the airport itself, it will remain closed for the coming hours. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning local time. It's going to remain closed until about 11 a.m. Local time while they continue that search and rescue operation to try and find anyone still alive in the water after that collision.
That was Nick Harper reporting in Washington, D.C. U.S. President Donald Trump's unveiled a plan to detain thousands of undocumented migrants in Guantanamo Bay, a U.S. naval base located on the southeastern coast of Cuba. Trump says he's ordered construction of a detention camp to hold up to 30,000 of what he calls criminal illegal aliens. Trump made the announcement just before he signed the Laken-Riley Act into law, his administration's first piece of legislation. The Cuban government criticized Trump's announcement. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel says it's an act of brutality and that the Guantanamo base is located in illegally occupied Cuban territory. Trump also revoked an extension of deportation protections granted to more than 600,000 Venezuelans already in the U.S. Nitza Soledad Perez has more from Miami.
In a significant policy shift that's sending shockwaves through South Florida's Venezuelan community, the Trump administration has revoked deportation protections for more than 600,000 Venezuelans living in the United States. The decision overturns an 18-month extension of a temporary protected status, or TPS, that was previously granted by President Biden. Here in Miami's Doral neighborhood, the news has it hard. Some are afraid, others are hoping it's just a review.
It is very serious because there are many people, many Venezuelans, who are working all over the United States. Contrary to what people say, they're not all criminals. The truth is that I believe it is a very small percentage. It's quite concerning for all the people in this situation because it's so many cancellations, people with TPS, payroll, and asylum.
I was expecting this. I really was. But not for everybody, like for delinquents and for another kind of people, like not for families who are here, who came with very small kids.
Yo creo que lo van a revisar.
I believe they will review it.
We have people in Congress, Maria Elvira Salazar and Diaz Balart, who will recommend to the president that not everyone should pay for the sins of a few. The spirit of the law, obviously, is to expel those who commit crimes, the delinquents, the criminals who have invaded this country, but not those who come seeking the American dream.
The move aligns with President Trump's broader immigration stance. During his first term, he attempted to end TPS for several other countries, including Haiti and El Salvador. Republicans argue the program has expanded beyond its original purpose of providing temporary shelter from disasters or conflicts. Legal challenges to this latest move are expected, with community leaders here already organizing legal workshops and information sessions.
That was Nitza Soledad Perez reporting. Turning to Asia, many foreigners are visiting China to experience the festive Spring Festival atmosphere firsthand. Chinese online travel service Trip.com says inbound travel orders from foreign tourists have surged by over 200% during the festival. Sunya has more from Beijing Capital International Airport.
This is the second day of the Chinese New Year, and it's still one of those days of the Spring Festival travel rush. And this day, traditionally, is for travel. And this year, that traffic has been driven up by the inbound travelers. The China's National Immigration Administration has estimated beforehand that for the Spring Festival holiday, on average, every day, 1.85 million cross-border trips are made to this country. Any time is a good time to visit China, but with the easing of the visa-free policies and with Spring Festival now a world intangible cultural heritage item, it's extra reason. We actually just picked up this brochure from the airport, and it has a whole list of activities this Spring Festival. But before foreign travelers come to China to enjoy the Spring Festival holiday, they also have a range of things to sort out here in the Chinese capital city. And cities like Beijing have been working hard to make their travel easy, comfortable, and hassle-free. Cai Pengcheng from Beijing Service.
The Beijing Service Counter is a 24-hour one-stop passenger information center, and we provide advisory services to all kinds of inquiries from air travel passengers at the airport, such as airport guide, flight information, essential travel information, terminal facilities and services. And we also provide some basic information assistance about stay and tour in Beijing, including tourist attractions, mobile payments, and some commonly used applications when travelers arrive in the city. And currently, the average advisories volume and service counter is 3,300 person times, and especially in Spring Festival, it can reach 3,900 person times on peak dates. And the peak hours for inward passengers every day are around at 5 a.m., 12 a.m., between 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. And the frequently asked questions are mainly focused on the airport transport directions, the locations for transportations, and the transfer service counters.
The National Immigration Administration also said they expect February 6th, February 7th to be the busiest.
That was Sunya in Beijing. Festivities for Spring Festival also take place around the world. In Japan, celebrations include lion dance performances and music shows in the Chinatown in Tokyo. Rebecca Bundan has more.
In an area of Tokyo called Ikebukuro, and this is a modern emerging Chinatown for the city, and that reflects over the years, growing numbers of Chinese people who are actually coming to live and work in Japan. And in this area, we can see a lot of banners around with pictures of the snake saying Happy New Year. There will be celebrations going on here, people enjoying good Chinese traditional food. There are dozens of Chinese restaurants in this area, people meeting families and friends. Of course, there are more and more Chinese tourists as well that have been coming to Japan too. And there are other areas of the country where there are much more established, older generations of Chinese people with big Chinatowns, including port cities of Yokohama and Kobe, where traditionally and historically those ports were open to foreign trade, and those areas will also be seeing even bigger celebrations with lion dances, music, a lot of festivities. But it's not only Chinese people who will be joining in these celebrations. There's a lot of interest in Japan in Chinese culture, of course. There are a lot of connections there culturally, and Japanese people also very, very curious and want to take part.
The lanterns are so beautiful. I ate a lot of Chinese food and felt the charm of Chinese culture. I've been to China on a business trip before, and I'd like to visit again during the Spring Festival one day.
It's not a public holiday here, but there are a number of Japanese people who want to join in these festivities too, and there's a lot of interest in the things that are going on.
That was Rebecca Bunden in Tokyo. In South Asia, more than 30 people died in a stampede at the world's largest religious gathering in India. At least 60 others suffered injuries. Held every 12 years, the 6-week-long Great Picture Festival attracts more than 400 million visitors. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has offered condolences to the families of victims. Ravinder Bawa has more from New Delhi.
It could happen that the death toll might rise in the next few days because the injuries were kind where people came to the hospital with fractures, they were bleeding. The people who died on the spot was because of suffocation, some because of heart attack, shocks. And remember, these are people who have gone from all ages. There were women, there were men, there were old people, there were children in this crowd. And according to the government, the episode happened because of the overcrowding in one section of the Mela where the barricade broke, and then the whole mishap happened. But the question is, before this event started, we've been hearing a lot from the government saying that they are going to use artificial intelligence to find out and for crowd management. And it surely seems that that could not happen, because the plan was that if a certain section of the river bank is going to be overcrowded, they will stop the movement of people to that bank and they will divert the devotees to the other side. But surely this was missing in the night. Probably the implementation of the plans which were drawn on paper were not done on the ground. And the fear is that in the next few days, right now, number of people are trying to get back to their homes. They will be going to these railway stations, and in the last Mahakumbh Mela, a similar episode happened on the last day where 36 people lost their lives in a stampede at the railway station. So we really have to see how there are many auspicious days which are coming, and how will the crowd management be done. The government will really have to buckle up in terms of controlling the crowd, because the kind of advertisement, the kind of social media coverage it has got, and so we will see 400 million come to after 45 days, about 400 million people. That's what the estimate of the government.
That was Ravinder Bawa reporting. Finally, in Africa, South Sudan's lifted a ban on Facebook, TikTok, and other social media sites. Government officials say the bans were put in place to help contain violence. Patrick Oyet has more.
The ban on the popular social media platforms was lifted on Tuesday, with people once again able to connect and do business digitally. The ban was placed on Facebook, TikTok, and other social media platforms last Wednesday. The government said it was concerned that the spread of some content was fueling already heated tensions and protests in South Sudan. The ban was condemned by the human rights organizations in the country. Many South Sudanese people use TikTok and Facebook for their livelihoods. With the security situation now stabilized, the government said the lifting of the ban can foster a safer digital environment and promote peace and stability in the country. The government also lifted a curfew it had imposed from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. The curfew was imposed after an unverified video circulated online, which seemed to indicate South Sudanese people being killed in Sudan's Wad Medani amid a civil war there. The protests have now stopped in South Sudan.
That was Patrick Oyet reporting. Now recapping the headlines. Reports say rescue crews have recovered 18 bodies after 2 aircraft crashed into a river near Ronald Reagan Airport in Washington, D.C. Over 30 died in a stampede at a religious gathering in India. And more foreign tourists experienced Spring Festival in China. And that's it for this edition of The Top Story, a podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sport, and culture, you can subscribe to The Beijing Hour, a 1-hour podcast news magazine program. We welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I'm Shane Bigham. Thanks for listening.